What's up, you guys? This is Sarah. My name is Sarah. This is One and Done Weekly. And today I want to talk to you about falling off the wagon, because we have all been there. So this conversation was actually, or this One and Done was actually inspired by a conversation I had with Forrest earlier this week about productivity. Slightly different from nutrition, but I think as soon as I share the story, I think you'll see how they connect, and I will show you how they connect regardless. So Forrest was talking to me about this cycle that he gets into with his productivity, and of course, as business owners, getting things done is very, very important to us. And so he was talking about how he tends to go about deciding what to do and then getting things done, and how he falls off the productivity wagon. And so for him, what this has traditionally looked like, we'll say, is that he has this laundry list of things that needs to get done. And we generally always have things that we always have to get done, right? So for him though, the way he approaches that laundry list of things is almost like a tyrannical marching orders. So he's got his long list. He doesn't really think about the why or thinking too much about, any rhythm around doing it. It's just, okay, this has to get done, this has to get done, this has to get done. And he pumps himself up and he's like, all right, the only way I'm going to get this done is by, biting down on my mouthpiece, as it were, and just driving forward, just sticking my head down and just go. And so what he ends up doing is he gets on the wagon that way, right? And his way of approaching it is just to power through and get everything done. And ultimately what he does is he burns himself out. So he works really, really hard. He might not take a break. He might work for days, including weekends. And then at some point, he burns out and it becomes too stressful, and he's working himself like a machine, even though he's a human being, not a machine. And then what does he do? Well, for him, that might turn into, he falls off the wagon by not getting his work done. Maybe he starts watching YouTube videos instead of getting his work done. Or, for us, especially as entrepreneurs, we do a lot of our work on Facebook. It suddenly becomes a lot easier to be just mindlessly consuming on Facebook rather than actually doing what doing your work on Facebook. So it might look like that. It just might look like general procrastination. And so as a result, when he finally, after procrastinating and doing all of these things for long enough, suddenly he realizes, I'm so behind. And then he has to go get back on the wagon, but he's basically dug himself a hole deeper by falling off to begin with. And so as he's sharing this with me, the crux of all this is he realized that those procrastination habits and the Facebook or the YouTube or whatever it is, what that really is his form of self-care. And so what he realized is that by approaching his productivity in this kind of tyrannical force march way, he runs himself into the ground, and then he has to recover through self-care habits, but because they're habitual, they are actual habits, right? So they haven't been planned or thought about. There's no intention behind them. They just end up being those easy things that completely takes him away from what he was trying to do. And so I thought that is a perfect example of what so many of us fall into with our nutrition. And so many of us fall into it with productivity as well, but I went ahead and drew out my own little visual for you here. But this is what we do, and I call this the inner critic's forced march, because I think for a lot of us, I think in Forrest's example too, I think that approach of forcing yourself to do something in such a difficult way, I 100% think that's our inner critic basically saying, unless you're hating life, you're not doing it right, which just isn't great. So what we do in our vicious cycle here is we decide, okay, we're going to lose weight. we're going to get back on, we're going to do this thing, and we do it by beating ourselves into submission. So we choose the absolute hardest way to do something possible. Maybe it's the technically fastest way to get results, but it's also brutal. And so we power through and we do this thing and we work really hard and we starve ourselves or do whatever. And then we end up exhausting ourselves. At some point, your body rebels and you rebel emotionally. You're just like, I'm tired of this strict plan that I'm on. And then as a result, you recover in unhealthy ways. So you end up, maybe your self-care of choice is, opening up a bag of chips and eating chips and salsa all night in front of the TV. Or maybe it's sweets, or we talked about Easter candy last week. Who knows what it is? But essentially, we call this falling off the wagon. But what I'm presenting to you today is an alternative perspective that this is actually our habitual form of self-care, because we didn't consider it when we started our plan. So we try to beat ourselves into submission. We overwhelm ourselves, we exhaust ourselves, and then we recover in unhealthy ways, and then we end up gaining weight, or even if you haven't gained weight from, like, maybe you just have one blowout, but you haven't gained any weight from it, you still feel like you have to crawl your way all the way back up to where you started. And so you're farther back than when you began, right? And so, as I said, what I am presenting to you today is the possibility that falling off the wagon is actually simply self-care. I know that might seem weird, like, how is binging on cookies self-care? But that's what it is, right? Whenever people, my clients, talk to me about, like, oh, I'm feeling stressed, so I'm eating, that is self-care, it's self-nourishment. And so, to finish off talking about the conversation I had with Forrest, he had such a wonderful insight as he was sharing this with me. He said, Sarah, I think the answer is that I need to plan my self-care in with my productivity. So rather than just saying, like, all right, I'm going to put myself on the back burner and just power through until I get all this stuff done, he's saying, no, I need to plan my self-care in with this. And then that way, guess what? He can sustain his work. And then that way, he doesn't have to fall back on the negative self-care that he has sort of habitually learned over the years. And then that way there's no cycle. He just keeps on going, right? And so what does this look like applied to nutrition? What this looks like is choosing a nutrition plan that is sustainable. So for example, if you are in the one and done, we have specific ways that we coach our clients through. And a lot of time, we have gotten complaints before where people are like, this isn't going to be fast enough. Well, no, but we tell you from the outset, it's a year-long program, right? Because we know the fastest way to get you to lose weight is to chop off a limb. But nobody wants to do that, right? The fastest way to lose weight is to not eat for a month. But nobody can sustain that, right? And also when you start eating again, you're just going to gain the weight back. And so as a result, what the ultimate way to go about losing weight, doing it successfully, and doing it in a way where you don't fall off the wagon is by choosing a plan that energizes you, that nourishes you, that excites you, and that you can do for as long as you absolutely need to get the results that you're wanting. And so I know that might seem, for some, that might seem a little bit like, oh, that's a pipe dream. But it's not, I promise you. Forrest has done it, I've done it, we've done it. And the interesting thing is, if you want to take this a step deeper, so I've just applied this just straight nutrition. What does it look like when you've gotten yourself in this negative nutrition cycle? But I will take it a step deeper. I can tell you in my own life, a lot of times when I got into this negative nutrition cycle, and I think I've shared this before, it's because I was experiencing what Forrest was experiencing in my productivity cycle. So maybe in my job, I was not valuing self-care. So I got myself in a job where I had none, where I just had to work. And then I got home and guess what? Self-care. I was self-soothing. right? So that's another piece of this. You know, whether the productivity part spoke to you or not, you know, where are you not prioritizing self-care in your relationships, in your work life, in your home life, and in so many things? It applies to just about everything. Self-care, planning your rest, knowing that you are only a human and that a human needs to be fed as well as exercised, both literally and metaphorically. That's an important thing. So what can you do with this today? I thought about several different exercises I could give you, journal prompts I could give you, but I'm just gonna leave you with one question to consider. And that question is this: what would have to happen or change in your life if you viewed your nutrition and weight loss plan as a form of self-care? What would have to change? So another way of looking at that is, rather than looking at yourself now in whatever form you are, you know, you might look at yourself and think, I'm disgusting. I look disgusting. I'm fat. Nobody's gonna love me like this. Nobody likes this, whatever. The worst things ever, right? That's your inner critic talking. But rather than looking at yourself as this disgusting person that needs to be fixed, what if you looked at yourself as a lovable person that simply needs self-care? That might change things. So let me know if this resonates at all. Definitely comment below if you have any insights, any thoughts, or if you had any realizations of how your approach to your own nutrition plan might need tweaking or changing. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you remember that no matter where you are in your journey with your own inner critic, I hope you know that you are lovable and worthy of love and worthy of all the self-care in the world. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. We'll talk soon. Take care.